Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God in Narayan, under Narayan Rishi, the Supremos being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and dear most spiritual master. Continuing with Srimad Bhagavatam, this is Canto 5, Chapter 17, starting with verse 19. 19 and 20 have no purport, so we'll briefly read them, and then we'll read the text today, which is a text and translation on text 20. Oh, so I guess, right, just one verse doesn't have a purport. Okay. Did we read 18 yesterday? We did read? No?
Yesterday there was no class.
Well, the day before yesterday. Because the last purport was text number 16, so maybe we should read.
No, I did 16.
Did you read 17? Okay, so we'll read.
Did someone do it after me?
There's no purport. The first purport is the verse I'm. I know that, yeah. Okay, so we'll chant briefly 17, 18, and then the text today will be 19. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya. Sarvaguna Sankhyanaya. Anantaya Vyaktaya Namat Iti. Very good. Translation. The most powerful Lord Shiva says, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you in your expansion as Lord Sankarshan. You are the reservoir of all transcendental qualities. Although you are unlimited, you remain unmanifest to the non-devotees. Text 18. Bhaje bhajanyarana para pankajam bhagasya krishnasya paramparayanam bhakteshvalam bhavita bhuta bhavanam bhavapaham dva bhavavam ishvaram. Very nice few words from that shloka. Bhavita bhuta bhavanam. He who manifests his different forms for the satisfaction of the devotees. So nice. Translation. O my Lord, you are the only worshipable person. For you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the reservoir of all opulences. Your secure lotus feet are the only source of protection for all your devotees, whom you satisfy by manifesting yourself in various forms. So the specific words in this connection are Aranapada Pankajam, whose lotus feet protects his devotees from all fearful situations. And again, Bhavita Bhuta Bhavana, who manifests his different forms for the satisfaction of his devotees. O my Lord, you deliver your devotees from the clutches of material existence. Non-devotees, however, remain entangled in material existence by your will. Kindly accept me as your eternal servant. And then the verse today, text 19. Na yasya mahaguna chitta vrittibir nirakshato yanu api dristir ajate ishe jata no ajita manyu ranghasang kas tam na manyeta jigishur atmanaha yasya maya gunachitta vrittibir yasya maya gunachitta vrittibir isheyatano jitamanyuranghasam isheyatano jitamanyuranghasam isheyatano jitamanyuranghasam kastam namanyeti jigishuratmanaha kastam namanyeta jigishuratmana yasya maya gunachitta vrittibir yasya maya gunachitta vrittibir nirakshato yan vapindristirajyate nirakshato yan vapidristirapyate isheyatano jitamanyuranghasam isheyatano jitamanyuranghasam kastam no manyeta jigishuratmana kastam namanyeta jigishuratmana yasya maya gunachitti vrittibir nirikshato yan vapidristirajyate isheyatano jitamanyuranghasam kastam namanyeta jigishuratmana yasya maya gunachitta vrittibir nirikshato yan vapidristirajyate isheyatano jitamanyuranghasam kastam namanyeta jigishuratmana yasya maya gunachitta vrittibir nirikshato yan vapidristirajyate isheyatano jitamanyuranghasam kastam namanyeta jigishuratmana. Anyone else? Yasya maya gunachitta vrittibir nirikshato yan vapidristirajyate isheyatano jitamanyuranghasam Kastam namanyeti jigisurātmana. Mataji's? Yasya maya gunachitta vittibir nirikshato yanva vidriste rajyate Shayato no chitamanyurangasam Kastam namanyeti jigisurātmana. Na, never. Yasya, whose? Maya, of the illusory energy. Guna, in the qualities. Chitta, of the heart. Vrittibihi, by the activities. Thinking, feeling, and willing. Nirikshataha, of him who is glancing. He, certainly. Anu, slightly. Api, even. Dristi, vision. Ajyate, is affected. Ishe, for the purpose of regulating. Jata, as. Na, of us. Ajita, who have not conquered. Manyu, of anger. Rangasam, the force. Ka, who? Tam, unto him, the Supreme Lord. Na, not. Manyeta, would worship. Jigishu, aspiring to conquer. Atmanaha, the senses. Translation. We cannot control the force of our anger. Therefore, when we look at material things, we cannot avoid feeling attraction or repulsion for them. But the Supreme Lord is never affected in this way. Although he glances over the material world for the purpose of creating, maintaining, and destroying it, he is not affected, even to the slightest degree. Therefore, one who desires to conquer the force of the senses must take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Then he will be victorious. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, let's repeat. I'll say, you say. We cannot control the force of our anger. Therefore, when we look at material things, we cannot avoid feeling attraction or repulsion for them. But the Supreme Lord is never affected in this way. Although he glances over the material world for the purpose of creating, maintaining, and destroying it, he is not affected, even to the slightest degree. Therefore, one who desires to conquer the force of the senses must take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Then he will be victorious. Jai Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai. Jai Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Jai. Shri Radha Shama Sundar Lalita Vishaka Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is always equipped with inconceivable potencies. Although creation takes place by his glancing over the material energy, he is not affected by the modes of material nature. Because of his eternally transcendental position, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears in this material world, the modes of material nature cannot affect him. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is called transcendence. And anyone who wants to be secure from the influence of the modes of nature, and anyone who wants to be secure from the influence of the modes of material nature must take shelter of him. We cannot control the force of our anger. Therefore, when we look at material things, we cannot avoid feeling attraction and repulsion for them. But the Supreme Lord is never affected in this way. Although he glances over the material world for the purpose of creating, maintaining, and destroying it, he is not affected, even to the slightest degree. Therefore, one who desires to conquer the force of the senses must take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Then he will be victorious. Om Agyantimanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurum Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kradamayam Dadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savarutam Purijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gobesha Gobika Kanda Radha Kanda Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vishabhanu Sute Devi Namami Hari Priye Chakalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Utitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this chapter is entitled Descent of the River Ganges. The previous chapter was a description of Jambudvip. Previous chapter to that was the descendants of King Priyavrata, and then was the forest of enjoyment. Last time I was in Vrindavan, we were discussing the forest of enjoyment. So we're beginning here with the prayers of Lord Shiva. And of course, he is immediately mentioned in reference to the descent of the river Ganges, because the Ganges is coming onto the head of Lord Shiva. And so Lord Shiva's abode is briefly mentioned, and then prayers by Lord Shiva are recited here. It's mentioned in a previous verse that Lord Shiva is meditating on the Sankarshan form of Sri Chaturvyuha. And so many nice verses are described here. These verses, especially select verses, can be memorized. here. For example, the first verse here. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Om Namo Bhagavate Mahapurushaya Sarvaguna Shankyayan Yanantaya Vyaktatyaya Namaiti. The most powerful Lord Shiva says, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisance unto you in your expansion as Lord Shankarshan. You are the reservoir of all transcendental qualities. Although you are unlimited, you remain unmanifest to the non-devotees. So this is, Lord Shiva is a very popular demigod in the Hindu, shall we say Hindu Trinity, that of Lord Vishnu, the maintainer, Lord Brahma, the creator, and Lord Shiva, the destroyer. But very few people of the general populace understand the exact position of Lord Shiva. And as we all know, Vaishnavanam Jata Shambhu, that Lord Shiva is the greatest Vaishnava. And so when Lord Shiva begins his prayers, he immediately addresses the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shankarshan, from who is expanded Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Kshirodakshay Vishnu. So this most incredibly powerful source of creation within this material world, Lord Shankarshan, Lord Shiva, understands is the source of everything. And therefore he begins his prayers to the Lord. And this is, as I mentioned, prayers like this can be memorized. And then when we're out on Sankirtan distributing books, and we meet people who may be somewhat argumentative, saying, no, Lord Shiva is supreme. But then if Lord Shiva is supreme, why is he? Immediately glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the reservoir of all transcendental qualities. And so it's instructive also in these verses. Lord Shiva is talking a lot about the devotees. He's talking about how although the Supreme Lord glances over the material creation, as we know from Bhagavad Gita, from Srimad Bhagavatam, the Supreme Lord glances over material nature, and it starts to become alive. He also glances over material nature, and all the living entities are impregnated within the material nature, again to take up their activities according to their previous karma. So for the purpose of creating, maintaining, and destroying it, the Lord glances over material nature. But his glance is completely transcendental. It's completely different from our glancing over the material nature. Lord Shiva says he is not affected even to the slightest degree. Therefore, one who desires to conquer the force of the senses must take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Then he will be victorious. So we can understand right here the difference between ourselves, the minute living entities, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As Bhagavad Gita tells us, that dhyayato vishayam pumsa sangas teshu vijayate sangas sanjayate kamat kro do vijayate. That by contemplating the objects of the senses, we develop attraction for them. From such attraction, lust develops from lust, anger arises from anger, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. When intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material world. So the Supreme Lord is glancing over the material nature, and we're also glancing over the material nature, but there's a difference. And so we have to always remember our position in this material world. Srila Prabhupada, is a recurrent theme in his purports is that one should always remember one's position. In fact, when Mukundadat Prabhu gives class, scholar Mukundadat, I'm always looking for some kind of a thread in his classes, and one of the threads that I picked up and seems to be a concurrent theme in his classes is that one of the most important things in our progressive realization of Krishna consciousness is to always remember or realize where we're at. After all, this is a science of self-realization. It's not the science of group realization, in one sense. In another sense, of course, we're dependent on our association of devotees, but even in that association, one should be looking out for the association of more advanced Vaishnavas. So Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport that because the Supreme Lord is in an eternally transcendental position, when he appears in this material world, the modes of material nature cannot affect him. As we know from Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvata tyaktva deham punarjana naitimam iti sorjuna. Not only is Krishna not affected by the three modes of material nature when he comes down to this material world, but anyone who knows the mystery of Krishna's appearance and activities, he also becomes transcendental. And being situated in that transcendental nature, he attains Krishna's abode, and he never comes back to this material world. Such is the power of that association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But our situation in this material world, being covered by the first element, the element of false ego, we are forgetful of our position as the eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the most important thing to remember and to always act in the capacity of our position as the eternal servant of Krishna, the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to the material conception of things, to be a servant is a very low position, and people in general aren't desiring that position. But in spiritual life, to become the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the agency of his pure servant is the most desirable situation. In fact, Srila Prabhupada explains, as he always does in his very choice poetry. Actually, let me find that and read that if I can. It's a very nice chapter. It's one of the most important chapters in the entire first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. One could say in the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, since the basis of our whole process of chanting Hare Krishna, and how that process develops step by step is minutely described in the second chapter of first canto, Divinity and Divine Service. Savai pum samparo dharmo yato bhakti roksaje ahaituki apratiyata yayatma suprasiditi. The supreme occupation dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service under the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada states, We have purposely denoted dharma as occupation because the root meaning of the word dharma is that which sustains one's existence. A living being's sustenance of existence is to coordinate his activities with his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Krishna is a central pivot of living beings. So nice the way Prabhupada talks. Krishna is a central pivot of living beings, and he is the all-attractive living entity or eternal form amongst all other living beings or eternal forms. Each and every living being has his eternal form in the spiritual existence, and Krishna is the eternal attraction for all of them. Krishna is the complete whole, and everything else is his part and parcel. The relation is one of the servant and the served. The relation is one of the servant and the served. It is transcendental and is completely distinct from our experience in material existence. This is the sentence that I was getting to. This relation of servant and the served is the most congenial form of intimacy. This relation of servant and the served is the most congenial form of intimacy. We're reading Srila Prabhupada's ecstasies in his purports here. And so the value of being in the Krishna consciousness movement is that we can constantly access the association of Srila Prabhupada through his purports. Prabhupada says one can realize this relation of servant and the served as the most congenial form of intimacy. One can realize it as devotional service progresses. Everyone should engage himself in that transcendent loving service of the Lord, even in the present conditional state of material existence. That will gradually give one the clue to actual life and please him to complete satisfaction. So this process that we've been given is so nice, is so incredibly powerful. So incredibly powerful and so incredibly fast. And we need a process that's very fast, because we're in Kali Yuga and we only live 100 years. And even that is, many people today even don't live 100 years. Even our devotees, many of them are leaving after 60, not even 70 years. So as Prabhupada says, that you may think that, you can take up Krishna consciousness when you're older. But I say to you that where's the guarantee that you will not die before me? And so this is important to remember. One thing that just came into mind is that we've lost, I think, most of the stalwart devotees, our preachers in our Krishna consciousness movement, we've lost because of falling asleep at the wheel while driving. Srila Prabhupada says that anyone who's driving a car some distance must get at least 8 hours of sleep. This is very, very important. And so we never know when we're going to leave, especially driving in the streets of India. It's always, the first time I came to India and I started driving a taxi around in Calcutta, it actually gave me a lot more faith that the Supreme Lord is expanded as Super Soul within everyone's heart. Because I thought that without Super Soul being there and directing people in their hearts, people's state of consciousness is so bizarre that, and people drive so crazy that there's no way there wouldn't be like tons more accidents than there are. So this is so nice that it said if one simply follows the process, renders devotional service to the Lord, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. That's in the next verse. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jnanedya Suvairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadadhaitukam. And in this verse, the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men can attain to the devotional service of the Lord. However, such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted. And then one can completely satisfy the self. So the reason for all of our endeavors in this world is because we're trying to satisfy ourself. But if we don't know what the self is, how can we know how to satisfy the self? Srila Prabhupada states that one cannot be satisfied with simply emolument of the body and the mind, inasmuch as we cannot satisfy the bird simply by cleansing the cage of the bird. We hear this again and again and again, this philosophy of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. We hear it again and again and again. And the reason we hear it again and again and again, and Prabhupada talks about it again and again, because we need to realize it and remember it again and again and again, because prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasam ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. Because we all think that I am the doer, that the activities we perform, that we're actually performing. But we understand, actually, according to Krishna's philosophy in Bhagavad Gita, that we actually do nothing. All the activities are performed by the modes of material nature. Said that all we really have power to do on the conditioned status of life is to desire. Therefore, we better always remember to desire like anything, because that's all we have. And the more we desire, the more we make immediate spiritual advancement. So because we're covered by the material modes of nature, and because these modes, the influence of these modes is so intricate, it's explained that three modes of material nature, ignorance, passion, and goodness. These modes combine, just like the three primary colors combine. 3 times 3 makes 9. 9 times 9 makes 81. Then 81 times 81, the different varieties of life, the different varieties of material conceptions that are produced by the three modes of material nature are literally unlimited. Therefore, we have to always take shelter of the Supreme Lord in His most merciful incarnation, and always remember to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. To take shelter of the instructions of our spiritual master, and to always associate with the Vaishnavas. Importantly, the more advanced Vaishnavas. And we can all tell the symptoms of the more advanced Vaishnavas because they appear a little bit impatient. They're very conscious not to waste any time outside of Krishna's service. And Maya is expert at covering the living entity. Once we forget Krishna, immediately we become covered and we forget our actual position. And we immediately think, oh, this material world is nice, this material body is nice, I have so much time to execute my Krishna conscious duties. Let me take a little time out and just, get a little bit of Maya, see a little movie here or there, and then come back to Krishna consciousness. But Maya is so powerful and so tricky that once we desire separate from Krishna, immediately she covers us, and then by her second potency, she throws us down into the material pool, as we already mentioned. When we simply meditate on the objects of the senses, we gradually fall down in the material pool and become bewildered. So we should always be hankering for the association of more advanced devotees, because in that advanced association of devotees, we really don't have to think about it so much. This material mind is a source of all our material problems. Therefore, the whole point, the whole pivot of the whole yoga system is to control the mind. Bhagavad Gita says this process of controlling the mind is so powerful that when we actually get to be able to control the mind, the super soul is already reached. Therefore, in all the yoga systems, all these very intricate, difficult processes of yoga are all centered around one thing: controlling the mind. And in Krishna consciousness, we have this process that it becomes it's so simple that if we actually follow the process scientifically, that automatically our mind will be controlled. Our mind is controlled, our senses are pacified, we feel satisfied in Krishna consciousness. The very nature of transcendence becomes enjoyable, and we want to simply go on hearing and chanting more and more and more and more, and we never get satiated. And so as we associate with devotees, this association has a very specific quality to it. As we advance from the neophyte stage of devotional service, we start realizing that Krishna's in everyone's heart. Our worshipable Master, our worshipable Lord, is not only there directly in the deity form, but He's also there residing in the hearts of all living beings, both moving and non-moving. But of course, He is there in the hearts of all the devotees, and He's so happy to be there in the hearts of His devotees, because the devotees are constantly engaged in His service, and He's always giving impetus for the devotees to engage in His service. Therefore, as we advance in devotional service, we start to naturally develop respect and honor for all the devotees, because we realize there is my worshipable Lord within the heart of the devotees. And as I can feel He's so much pleased with my service, how much He must be pleased with the service of others. Therefore, by this process of Krishna consciousness, it's so nice that these attitudes, these advanced devotional attitudes, develop spontaneously within our heart, within the heart, as we progress more and more in following this process, this amazing process, this scientific process, this very simple process, at the same time, very difficult process of Krishna consciousness. So, Lord Shiva is the greatest Vaishnava. Vaishnavanam Jita Shambhu. And so therefore, as we mentioned, this process of association with devotees is so valuable, can accelerate us in the path of devotional service so fast. And so if we learn who those advanced devotees are, and render service to those devotees, and associate with them in a service-minded mood, then we can make very rapid spiritual advancement. There's a very nice verse, one of the most famous verses by Lord Shiva. I just wanted to recite before we end class. Because his wife is asking him, what is the best worship? And Lord Shiva says, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnu, Aradhanam param, tasmat parataram, Devi tariyanam samarchanam. Of all the types of worship, worship of Lord Vishnu is the best. And better than the worship of Lord Vishnu is the worship of his devotee, the Vaishnava. Srila Prabhupada, very nice, explains in this purport where this verse is mentioned. By the grace of Vishnu, a Vaishnava can render better service than Vishnu. That is a special prerogative of a Vaishnava. The Lord actually wants to see his servants work more gloriously than himself. For instance, on the battle of Kurukshetra, Sri Krishna provoked Arjuna to fight because all the warriors on the battlefield were to die by Krishna's plan. Krishna himself did not want to take credit. Rather, he wanted Arjuna to take credit. Therefore, he asked him to fight and win fame. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gives credit to a devotee who performs any heavy task perfectly. It was Hanumanji who jumped over the sea in one leap and reached the shore of Lanka from the shore of Bhartavarsha. When Lord Ramachandra chose to go there, he paved the way with stones, although by his will, the stones were able to float on the sea. If we simply follow Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions and follow in the footsteps of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, this Krishna consciousness movement can advance, and even more difficult tasks can be performed by the preachers remaining faithful to the service of the Lord. Jai Gandharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Are there any questions or comments? Thank you very much for listening. Hare Krishna.